Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Between Monsters and Men. Today we're going to dive into the reincarnation story of Shanti Devi. Forgive me now if I butcher the pronunciations of any of the words that are about to be said. Lugdi was born January 18, 1902, in Mathura, India. At the age of 10, she was married to Kedarnath Chabi, a local shopkeeper. For Kedarnath, this was his second wife. His former one also passed away. He owned both a cloth and a branch shop. Growing up in India, Lugdi was very religious and often made several pilgrimages when she was young. At one point, she had injured her leg, which she had to be treated for. Even after a second time injuring her leg, she fought on until a second pregnancy. She gave birth to a son via C-section on September 25th, 1925, but unfortunately, 9 days later, her health deteriorated and she died. 1 year, 10 months, and 7 days after Lugdi's death on December 11, 1926, a little girl was born named Shanti Devi. She was born in Delhi, India, and was like any other little girl until the age of 4 when she started to talk, making claim that she was not who her parents claimed she was, and even mentioning that she had a husband and children. Considering this as just a child's fantasy, her parents did nothing for a time period. They started to get worried when she would repeat and eventually narrate a number of incidents connected with her life in Mathura with her husband. She mentioned 3 distinctive features about her husband. He was fair with a big war on his left cheek and wore reading glasses. He also owned a shop located in front of Dwarkadish temple. Occasionally while eating, she would say,
"In my house in Mathura, I ate different kinds of sweets."
While her mother dressed her, she would tell her what type of dresses she used to wear. By the age of 6, she was giving a detailed account of her death following a childbirth. Worried and unsure what to do, her parents consulted a family physician, who, amazed by how the little girl was so detailed in the explanation of surgical procedures. That's when the parents started to believe that these memories were of a past life. As she got older, she continued to ask her parents to take her to Mathura, where she claimed to be from. However, they refused. One day, Babu Bishanjan, a teacher in Ramjas High School in Daryajan in Delhi, told Shanti Devi that if she told him her husband's name, he would take her to Mathura. She told him her husband's name was Pandit Kedarnath Chabi. Babu wrote a letter to Pandit Kedarnath Chabi detailing all the statements that Shanti had stated and asked him to visit Delhi. Kedarnath replied, confirming most of her statements, and suggested that it'd be best if he sent one of his relatives to meet her first to test her. His name was Pandit Kanjimal. When Shanti met Kanjimal, she was able to recognize him as her husband's cousin. She revealed details about her house in Mathura and informed him of the location where she had buried some money. She was asked if she could go by herself from the railway station to her house in Mathura by herself if she was to. She replied yes, if they could take her there one day. Kanjimal was so impressed that when he returned to Mathura, he persuaded Kedarnath to visit Delhi. On November 12, 1935, Kedarnath came to Delhi with Lugdi's son, Navneet Lal, and his present wife. In hopes to mislead Shanti, Kanjimal introduced Kedarnath as Kedarnath's elder brother. She replied in a low, firm voice,
"No, he is not my husband's elder brother. He is my husband himself."
She then addressed her mother.
"Didn't I tell you he was fair and he has a wart on his left side cheek near his ear?"
She then asked her mother to prepare a meal. When asked what she should make, Shanti said that Kedarnath was fond of stuffed potato parathals and pumpkin squash. This dumbfounded Kedarnath, for they were his favorite meals. Kedarnath asked if she could tell them anything unusual to establish full faith in her. Shanti replied,
"Yes, there is a well in the courtyard of our house where I used to take my bath."
What was for sure was, Shanti was emotionally overwhelmed when seeing Navneet, her son in her past life. Upon seeing him, her eyes welled with tears and she hugged him. Kedarnath asked how she was able to recognize Navneet when she had seen him only once as an infant before she died. Shanti explained that her son was part of her soul and the soul was able to recognize him. After dinner, Shanti asked Kedarnath,
"Why did you marry her?"
obviously referring to his present wife.
"Had we not decided that you would not marry?"
He didn't reply. Later that night, he spoke to Shanti alone and would come to admit that he was fully convinced that Shanti was his past wife, because there were many things that she had mentioned that no one but Lugdi could have known. Her story spread all over the country through the media, reaching the ears of Mahatma Gandhi. Gandhi appointed a committee of 15 prominent people to study the case. The committee was able to convince her parents to allow her to accompany them to Mathura. On November 24, 1935, They left with Shanti by rail, and the reports they wrote described some of what happened. She was excited when the train approached Mathura. She mentioned that once they reached Mathura, the doors of the temple of Dwarkadish would be closed. The language she used to say this was the typical dialect of the Mathura people. The first incident that attracted the committee's attention was her recognizing her former husband's elder brother through a crowd. This was spontaneous and so natural that it stunned everyone. Afterwards, they took her into a tanga, which is kind of like a taxi but back in the old days, and instructed the driver to follow Shanti's directions. On the way she was leading them, she was able to describe changes that had taken place since her time, which were all correct. She was able to recognize some important landmarks as well. After Shanti noticed an elderly person in the crowd when reaching her destination, she bowed to him and told the others that he was her father-in-law, and he was indeed. Inside the house, she was able to locate her bedroom and recognize many of her items without hesitation. She was tested on a few words of Mathura, which no outsider would normally know, and she was able to correctly answer them. She then guided them to the house where she and her husband had formerly lived for several years and had no difficulty guiding them there. She was able to find the well she used to bathe in and led them to a flower pot where she had buried her money before she passed. However, the money wasn't there. They later learned that Kedarnath had taken the money out after Lugdi's death. At her parents' house, she was able to recognize her mother and father, both whom openly wept at their meeting. It was a scene that had moved everyone there. Finally, Kedarnath had truly believed Shanti was his former wife when one day they were alone and he was able to ask a very personal question. Kedarnath asked Shanti that when she was suffering from arthritis and she couldn't even get up, how did she become pregnant? She described the whole process of intercourse with him, which left Kedarnath in no doubt that Shanti was his wife in her previous life. Many tried to prove her story, her life, was a hoax. Shanti's case is significant for the fact that it is one of the most thoroughly investigated cases, studied by hundreds of researchers, critics, scholars, saints, and public figures from all parts of India and abroad from the mid-1930s and on. One extreme critic named Sture Lonerstrand came all the way from Sweden to expose this case as a fake, but left writing the investigation as the only fully explained and proven case of reincarnation that has been. With the amount of verbal and physical proof of her recognizing and detailing events, people, and places in her previous life up until then, surely proves enough to me that she is truly a reincarnation story to be studied upon and respected. One of the first to be publicly announced and severely studied by researchers, saints, and such, truly proved that she was a wonder to be listened to. Due to YouTube demonetizing videos like mine, please check out my Patreon page listed below to help support me in my journey to bring you all that is mysterious, creepy, bizarre, and unusual. Please like, comment, and subscribe.